Keanu Reeves arrived in Portland, Oregon, in the early morning hours, just as the city was beginning to wake up. His face was calmly confident and slightly thoughtful, as if he had come not just to participate in a festival, but to find something he had long been searching for in his soul. And this story began with a simple, but such an important moment, a meeting with fate, which forever changed not only his life, but also the lives of those who were ready to listen and accept the light coming from the depths of his soul. Portland is a city of contrasts, where ancient architecture coexists with modern art objects, and freedom and the spirit of experiments are in the air. It is here, in this unique place, that the City Art Festival is held annually, attracting people from all over the country and the world. Keanu, known for his love of art and desire for new creative discoveries, decided to become a part of this event. Keanu wasn't just a visitor. His presence in the city was perceived as a sign of change. His quiet but powerful energy literally filled the air, making hearts beat faster in anticipation of something great. When meeting him on the street, people could not help but notice how his eyes reflected a sincere love for life and a desire to inspire others. In one of Portland's central parks, where artists, musicians, and dreamers gathered every morning, Keanu stopped to enjoy the moment. He sat on a bench, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. This moment of calm, filled with a sense of peace, seemed to him a harbinger of change. He understood that here, in this city, he could not only give a piece of his talent, but also find new meanings that would transform his inner world. Meanwhile, the city continued to wake up. Boutiques were opening, the first bus stops appeared on the streets, and local artists were preparing for today, which promised to be a bright event. Keanu, watching this, remembered his own first steps in the world of cinema and art. He knew how important it is to be able to feel the moment and accept it as it is, not being afraid to be yourself, despite all the expectations of others. His thoughts were immersed in memories of how he himself once sought his place in the world, facing doubts and prejudices. Today, he wanted to convey this message to those who were just starting their journey, to those who doubted their abilities. With this understanding, he rose from the bench and headed towards the main square, where preparations for the art festival were already beginning. The main square of Portland, among the ancient fountains and green alleys, was already crowded with people. Representatives of the local art community, musicians, poets, and simply lovers of beauty gathered here. A spark of inspiration sparkled in his eyes when he saw how street artists created amazing installations from scrap materials. This scene seemed to him to be the embodiment of the American spirit of freedom and creativity, where everyone could be part of the great creative flow. The air was filled with the energy of change and anticipation, and every new sound, every movement seemed to be a harbinger of something greater. Keanu felt a desire to contribute to this celebration, to share his story and inspire others to new feats. Portland, with all its charming streets, cozy cafes, and endless opportunities for creativity, became a real oasis for Keanu, where he could forget about the noise of the big world and immerse himself in an atmosphere of mutual respect and support. From the first seconds of his stay in Portland, Keanu felt how the city was breathing with creativity and freedom. He noticed that every building, every corner of this place was imbued with the spirit of the American dream, where there is no place for prejudices and stereotypes. The city, built on the principles of respect for individuality, inspired bold actions and new beginnings. For many here, art was not just entertainment, but a way to express their souls, and Keanu was ready to share this passion, bringing a piece of his experience and wisdom to it. In the heart of Portland, among the old streets and cozy alleys, there was one of the most famous places in the city, the Cafe Coffee and Canvas. This establishment was not just a coffee shop, but a real meeting point for creative souls, where every morning began with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and a whisper of inspiration. It was here that on that fateful day local artists, writers, musicians, and just people seeking refuge from the daily hustle and bustle flocked. During one of those morning hours, when the soft light of dawn penetrated the interior of the cafe through the large panoramic windows, Sarah, a young and talented artist known for her bold, almost revolutionary works, came to the cozy terrace of the establishment. Her light hair, gathered in a careless bun, and bright, sparkling eyes foreshadowed that behind her work there was a rich inner world, full of passions and dreams. Sarah chose this morning to discuss new ideas for the upcoming exhibition with colleagues, because at Coffee and Canvas there was always an atmosphere of mutual exchange and support. However, as is often the case, even the most inspiring places are not without unexpected challenges. That day, a group of local critics dropped by the cafe, a group of people accustomed to judging art solely by their own conventional standards. Among them were Jonathan and Megan, two young men known for their critical and arrogant attitude toward any manifestation of creativity that did not correspond to their ideas about true art. Their presence always caused tension, because they believed that art should be flawless and deviations from classical norms were unacceptable. Sarah, having ordered herself a latte with light foam, settled herself at a table by the window, laying out her pencils and ready to share fresh ideas with her friends. But at the moment when she was just beginning to tell about her bold plans, Jonathan, who was nearby, cast a mocking glance and said with a sly smile, "Are you sure your work can compete with real art? These chaotic brushstrokes are just chaos." His words, spoken too loudly, instantly pierced the silence of the cafe, causing everyone's gaze to involuntarily stop at his arrogant face. Megan, echoing his comment, added, "Sometimes it feels like you're just trying to stand out without having any real technique. Art requires discipline, not mindless experimentation." The words echoed through the room, and the atmosphere, previously filled with friendly energy, suddenly froze in tense anticipation. Sarah felt a shudder run through her body, and for a moment she wanted to hide from such uncompromising condemnation. But a spark of inner strength flared in her eyes. She knew that every creation, every stroke of the brush reflected her soul, and she did not allow others' words to destroy her confidence. At the same time, the atmosphere in the cafe began to change rapidly. The visitors, watching what was happening, exchanged glances, sensing that something more was at stake than just debates about artistic techniques. Everyone understood that there was a clash of worldviews taking place here, a world where art is free self-expression, and a world where it is reduced to strict frameworks and conventions. Keanu Reeves, who had entered the Portland atmosphere earlier with quiet determination, noticed that the tension at Coffee and Canvas was beginning to mount. His calm and experience told him that even in the most conflicted situations, there was an opportunity for change. He walked up to the table where Sarah stood and asked in a soft but confident voice, "What's going on?" His voice, filled with empathy and calm confidence, seemed to dissolve some of the icy coldness emanating from Jonathan and Megan. Jonathan looked at Keanu in surprise and said, "We're just giving her some advice." Well, maybe a little criticism so she understands that her work is not up to the true standards. However, Keanu's words sounded like a challenge, like a call to think about the fact that true art does not need someone else's approval or strict assessments. He continued softly but firmly, "Advice is always good if it is given with love and respect. But when it becomes an instrument of humiliation, it loses its power. Art is the voice of the soul, and every paint, every brushstroke reflects the heart of the author. Why not give yourself the opportunity to be free? We were all beginners once, and we all need support. Let me ask you a question. What does true art mean to you?" With this question, he seemed to question established dogmas, offering the opportunity to look at creativity from a different, more human side. There was no answer, but the silence that reigned spoke for itself. People began to realize that even the most firmly held beliefs can be revised if you look at them from a different angle. Keanu continued, "Art is the voice of the soul. It cannot exist in the cage of stereotypes and judgment. Every painting, every brushstroke is part of the artist's inner world, and if we do not give them freedom, we ourselves deprive ourselves of the opportunity to see the beauty that is born from the courage to be ourselves." His words echoed around the room, making people think about how criticism should not come from a place of arrogance, but from a desire to understand and support the artist. He looked at Sarah, who sat there, slightly shaken by his words, and added with a warm smile, "Sarah, your work is a reflection of your heart, and it deserves to be seen in its full form, without the distortion of other people's expectations. You should be proud of each of your creations, because they are a part of you." Keanu paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. He knew that sometimes it only took one sincere gesture, one kind remark, to change someone's mind. His calm and confidence were infectious. Those who had previously doubted the power of words now began to look at him with admiration and respect. Jonathan, realizing that his attempt to humiliate the talented girl was futile, tried to resume the conversation, but his voice became quiet and uncertain. We just wanted her to understand that she needs to improve." However, his words were drowned out by the sounds of a new dialogue that was already emerging in the hearts of the cafe's patrons. Keanu, smiling reservedly, gently pointed out, "Advice is always valuable when it is given with love and understanding. But humiliation does not lead to anything good. Instead of destroying, we can create. Instead of criticizing, let's support each other." With each word he spoke, the tension in the room gradually gave way to understanding and respect. Even those who had previously tried to impose their views began to reconsider their assessments. At that moment, coffee and canvas ceased to be just a place for morning coffee. It became an arena where a real battle for the heart of art, for the opportunity to be heard, for the right to self-expression took place. This meeting, initiated by Keanu's intervention, became a turning point in the life of coffee and canvas. The guests of the cafe, inspired by his wisdom and warmth, understood that true art cannot be limited by the framework of preconceived opinions. It lives in each of us and longs to be heard. Keanu Reeves, with his calm and heartfelt intervention, not only stopped the conflict, but also ignited in the hearts of people the desire to change, the desire for mutual understanding and love for creativity. Against this backdrop, Keanu suggested, "Let's leave preconceived notions behind and give everyone the opportunity to find their own inspiration. Let coffee and canvas be a place today where every voice is heard and every idea finds its reflection in our hearts." Meanwhile, in the corner of the cafe, where an elderly artist, a longtime legend of the local art community, sat quietly, with a smile on her face, realizing that it is precisely such moments when art goes beyond superficial condemnation and becomes a true dialogue of souls that shape the future of culture. A spark of hope flashed in her eyes, because every conflict, even the most acute, can become a starting point for something greater, for change, for new ideas, for a real unification of people. One of the audience members, a young musician named Alex, who no one expected to hear speak, stood up quietly and began sharing his story. Alex spoke of growing up surrounded by music, but the harsh realities of life silenced him, leaving his dreams without a voice. His story was like a song, each note a reflection of pain, but also a glimmer of hope. He told of how one day, after a particularly difficult experience, he heard a voice inside himself calling him to the stage, reminding him that even in the darkest moments, there is light to be found. Alex's words echoed throughout the room, evoking memories of how many in the room had experienced similar moments when the world seemed cold and uncaring. One of the participants, Maria, a budding graffiti artist with brightly colored hair, picked up spray paint and, without waiting for approval, walked out the back door of the cafe. She seemed to be breaking through the ordinary, leaving behind traces of bright colors on the old brick walls of the neighboring building. These spontaneous patterns became the first symbol of the spark of creativity, breaking the silence of the familiar world and reminding everyone that art can transform even the most boring corners of the city. Back inside, Maria shared her inspiration with others. "When I see this world, I can't help but leave a mark on it. Each graffiti is my soul, embodied in color and form. Today, I felt that the world was screaming for change, and I had to answer it." Her words, full of passion and determination, ignited new sparks in the hearts of the listeners. People who had previously been quiet and reserved now discussed what they had seen with interest, sharing their ideas, dreams, and even sketching future works on napkins. At the other end of the room, a group of musicians who had been playing quietly in the corner had gathered. Influenced by the lively discussion, they began to improvise on their instruments, turning a simple jazz rhythm into something more, a sound painting in which each chord told a story and each rhythmic pulse reflected the pulse of the city. The sounds of the saxophone intertwined with the melody of the piano, creating an atmosphere in which words of lost pain and hope merged into a single whole, making everyone present feel that music can heal even the deepest wounds of the soul. At that moment, the spotlight fell on Laura, a young poetess whose poems were always filled with subtle sadness and incredible power at the same time. Inspired by the general mood, she stood in front of the small audience, holding a tattered notebook in her hands, and began to read her lines. "Thoughts, like sparks, wander in the night. Every step is a small challenge to fate, and every word, worlds come to life. When the heart boldly dreams," her voice, quiet but penetrating, filled the hall with such power that even those who had only recently discovered the sparks of creativity froze in admiration. Every word, every poem became a guide to a world where emotions carried light and the possibility of change. In the center of the room, where sincere silence and mutual understanding reigned, Keanu once again said a few words to inspire those gathered to further revelations. Every story told here is not just a memory. It is a life lesson that changes hearts and gives us the strength to move on. Let your words be a bridge that connects souls and not like walls that divide us. In response to these stories, a young writer named Ryan, who had been silent in the corner until that moment, decided to share his story about finding meaning in life amidst an endless stream of disappointments. Ryan spoke about how he lost faith in himself after failing a literary competition, how his dreams of great work seemed shattered and meaningless, but how one day, after reading a letter from his old mentor, he realized that every failure is a step towards great success. His words were full of determination and tenderness, and with each word he spoke, the room seemed to fill with new colors. Ryan concluded his story with the words, "We are all looking for answers, and sometimes the answers come precisely when we are ready to listen to our inner voice, when we are ready to believe in ourselves, no matter what." Each story shared in that moment was like a petal falling into a bright, colorful bouquet that united the souls of the people gathered at coffee and canvas. These revelations captured not only pain and loss, but also the incredible power to transform devastating moments into new beginnings, inspiring change. Conversations evolved into lively discussions where everyone could ask questions, share their experiences, or simply listen. And in that listening, great healing was found. Keanu, watching this process, felt that his intervention had become a catalyst for a real spiritual transformation. He approached each person who wanted to continue the conversation, encouraging them with quiet but confident words, treating each person as if they were the most important person in the room. His presence had a calming effect, like a warm blanket enveloping everyone who came here for comfort or inspiration. Among those listening was a young woman named Lily, who, despite her quiet manner, shared her experiences of how she had to deal with feelings of loneliness and uncertainty. Lily said that her life had been full of doubts, and she always believed that she was not destined to be heard until she met people like those here today in this small oasis of sincerity. Her story was filled with a deep sense of gratitude and a determination to change her destiny, despite all the obstacles that stood in her way. Thus, stories that change hearts became a real turning point for everyone present at Coffee and Canvas. These were not just stories, they were a living experience that could change lives, inspire heroic deeds, and give hope for a better future. Everyone who listened to these stories left the cafe not just with a cup of coffee, but with a renewed belief that even in the darkest moments of life there is a place for light, for love, and for change. It was these sincere and touching revelations that made this day unforgettable, leaving in everyone's hearts a small spark that could flare up into a flame of inspiration and joy. The exchange of ideas and creative discoveries continued for several hours. People who had previously come simply to drink coffee now became participants in a real festival of ideas. Someone suggested organizing a joint exhibition right here, at Coffee and Canvas, to show that creativity knows no bounds, and every voice, every spark, can be the beginning of something great. Bold suggestions were made, creating a street art project that would unite all of Portland, organizing open-air music evenings where everyone could share their creative gift, and even organizing poetry battles to give young talents a chance to declare themselves. At the center of this creative whirlwind was Keanu Reeves himself, who, observing what was happening, understood that he had witnessed the birth of something unique. He not only stopped the conflict, but also created a space where sparks of creativity flared up brighter and brighter. He slowly walked between the tables, exchanging a few warm words with each participant, reminding, art is not just a hobby or a way of self-expression. It is our life, our way of communicating with the world. Every spark you light can light the way not only for you, but for everyone around you. At the end of the day, Coffee and Canvas turned into a temple of creativity, where every word spoken in conversation, every picture painted in a hurry, and every melody sung with sincerity became symbols of change. People left the cafe, taking with them particles of new ideas, charged with positive energy and faith that the future can be bright. The sparks of creativity ignited that day promised to flare up into a flame capable of illuminating even the darkest corners of life. The next day, Portland woke up with a sense of something strange in the air, as if nature and city life had come together to celebrate the power of creativity. From the crack of dawn, the streets were lit by the bright light of the morning, reflected in cafe windows, the walls of historic buildings, and even in the eyes of passers-by. A city usually known for its informal spirit and creative atmosphere, today it became an arena where the arts transcended boundaries and united people of all ages, backgrounds, and views. From the early hours of the morning, people began to gather in the main square in downtown Portland, where a colorful installation and sculptures created by local artists greeted everyone with their unusual glow. The square had a festive feel. Colorful banners and posters created by art festival participants fluttered in the wind, and the sounds of street musicians playing saxophones, guitars, and even street drums penetrated the very heart of everyone walking along the sidewalks. As soon as the first rays of the sun illuminated the city, film studios, galleries, and small workshops began to open their doors to all who wanted to immerse themselves in the atmosphere of creativity. Street artists, who could previously only be seen at dusk, now boldly painted graffiti on specially designated walls, turning ordinary brick fences into huge canvases filled with bright colors and bold images. Every stroke, every line spoke of change, of the fact that art is not only a means of self-expression, but also a powerful unifying force. An improvised podium was erected in the central square, where local poets, musicians, and actors gathered to share their stories and ideas. It was here, in the open air, that a real creative forum was created, where everyone could speak out and hear a response from the audience. Performances alternated one after another, and each new story, told with sincerity and passion, became a small brick in the building of a new urban mentality. The city dwellers, previously busy with everyday concerns, were surprised to find that their souls came alive to the sounds of live music, rhythmic drum beats, and melodic poems read in Russian, English, and even Spanish. There was no room for disagreements or biased assessments on this day. The atmosphere of unity and mutual understanding reigned on the main square. People who came from all corners of the city shared their impressions, discussed what they had seen, and, most importantly, created something new together. Small master classes organized by local artists allowed everyone to touch the process of creating art. Someone learned the technique of watercolor, someone experimented with graffiti, and others simply enjoyed the opportunity to observe the process and ask questions to the masters. Open studios located right on the streets turned into real laboratories of creativity, where ideas were born and brought to life in front of amazed spectators. Of particular interest was the corner where the Urban Mosaic project took place. Here, Portlanders of all ages could leave their mark on a huge wall provided by the festival organizers. Anyone could write a word, draw a symbol, or simply leave a handwritten signature. The result of this collective creativity was a bright, colorful composition that reflected the diversity of views, cultures, and stories gathered in one place. Each fragment of the mosaic was significant. These were small stories filled with dreams, hopes, and love for life, which together formed a single canvas symbolizing the cohesion of the city. City blocks, usually separated by streets and bustle, seemed to merge into one big creative space on this day. Street cafes turned into places for impromptu concerts, where local musicians and singers shared their original compositions, and artists staged live performances, demonstrating their mastery of painting right in front of the public. Every detail, from the design of shop windows to the signs on houses, seemed to be part of a single creative idea aimed at uniting people. People laughed, talked, exchanged contacts and promises of new meetings, because on this day everyone felt that their contribution was important and valuable. An important part of the event were excursions conducted by experienced guides who told about the history of art development in Portland. Walking along the historic streets, residents and visitors of the city learned about how art has always played a key role in the formation of the city's identity. The excursions ended at old buildings where great artists used to work, and now these places serve as inspiration for modern creators. Each story was picturesque and detailed. Each historical fact is a bridge between the past and the present, reminding that culture and art are the foundation on which the future is built. In the evening, as the sun began to set, a grandiose light show was staged on the main square. Specially created projections on the facades of buildings, synchronized with music, enlivened the city streets, turning them into fairy tale landscapes, where every shadow and every ray of light had its own meaning. People gathered in the square, holding their breath, watched as the city was filled with magic, and at that moment all prejudices and divisions dissolved in a single burst of beauty. Light effects were accompanied by live music, and the melodies, shimmering, created the feeling that all of Portland had become one big organism, in which each part, be it a person or a building, plays its own unique role. The night of this day became the culmination of the holiday, when a grand open-air concert was organized in the Central Park. Famous and aspiring artists performed on stage, their voices and instruments merging into a single musical canvas that penetrated into the very heart of everyone. People danced, hugged, sang together, It seemed that art that evening was able to erase any barriers between people. Even those who had not believed in the power of creativity before this day began to realize that art is truly capable of uniting, healing wounds, and giving hope. City squares, alleys, and even quiet corners that usually seemed unnoticeable came alive on this day, becoming arenas for spontaneous performances and meetings. People, inspired by the general mood, organized street theaters where everyone could take part, feel like an actor, and tell their story. Theatrical performances, improvisations, and even dance flash mobs filled the streets, turning Portland into a real festival of life and creativity. These moments, filled with sincere emotions, left an indelible mark on the hearts of everyone who witnessed such unity. Keanu Reeves, watching all this, felt his own soul fill with gratitude for the opportunity to be part of this miracle. He walked the streets, talked to people, asked questions, listened to their stories, and, sometimes, shared his own thoughts on how art changes the world. His presence became a symbol of the fact that even one person can inspire an entire city to change. His words and warm smiles found a response in everyone who met him on the way, becoming small sparks that, together with the general flow of creativity, ignited the fire of unity. Thus, on this day, Portland became a place where art not only decorated the streets, but also united hearts. Everyone who took part in this celebration took with them a piece of light, inspiration, and confidence that together you can create something truly great. The day when art united the city became a vivid reminder that creativity is a language understood by everyone, regardless of differences, and that true unity is born when every voice is heard. This day went down in Portland history as a symbol of change, as proof that even in the most difficult times you can find a place for dreams, hope, and a real celebration of life. After a wild and inspiring day of art and creativity that brought Portlanders together, there came a moment when the season of change entered a new beginning. It was a moment filled with a quiet, almost sacred atmosphere, where everyone felt like their lives were about to take on new meaning. That evening, as the last rays of the setting sun disappeared over the horizon and the city began to twinkle, it was more than just the end of a celebration. It was the beginning of a new era for everyone who took part in this amazing day. The narrow streets of Portland, once filled with the usual bustle of the city, now smelled of change. The city was slowly shedding the fatigue of the past, opening the doors to new dreams and hopes. For many residents, this evening became a symbolic turning point, a moment when a past filled with doubts and disappointments gave way to a bright future full of possibilities and unlimited potential. People who had previously looked for answers in the words and judgments of others now began to listen to their own hearts. The encounter with art they had experienced during the day awakened a desire to change, to create, and, above all, to live life to the fullest. Among the crowd slowly dispersing along the evening streets, one could see faces illuminated by a new confidence. Many stopped to think for a moment, what if today is the first day of my new journey? In one of the small cafes located near the central square, a diverse group of people gathered to discuss the events of the past day and make plans for the future. Here, at cozy tables with soft lamplight and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, conversations arose about how art can not only unite, but also heal souls. Each participant shared his vision of the future, dreaming of how you can change the world around you, if only you can see beauty in the simplest things. Maria, a vibrant graffiti artist who has previously adorned the city's walls with her bold brushstrokes, told how inspiration suddenly struck her while walking through Portland at night. She described how, watching the flickering lights and reflections in the wet pavement, she realized that every new day was a chance to leave her mark, to bring a piece of light into this world. Her story was full of emotion and sincerity, and the audience could not help but be infected by her optimism. For me, this is not just art, she said. It's a way to find myself again, to believe that change is possible, and to be a part of something great. In another part of the cafe, a young musician, Alex, whose voice and melodies have long been a symbol of change for many, shared his memories of how music became his salvation in difficult times. He recalled how one day, having lost faith in his own strength, he heard a quiet call within himself, which became the first chord of his new life. Alex spoke about how each morning brought him new hope, and how music helped him survive moments of despair, opening up a world full of possibilities. Music is not just a set of sounds, he said. It is a way to speak to the world, to share your experiences and find support where before there was only darkness. Keanu Reeves, who was watching the events with a warm smile and deep understanding, was in no hurry to leave the place. His presence in the cafe not only inspired those around him, but also served as a reminder that change begins with each of us. He spoke quietly but confidently about the importance of believing in yourself, despite all the obstacles and adversity, and how every small victory becomes the basis for a great future. His words were not just consolation, they sounded like a manifesto for everyone who decided that the time had come to change their lives. A new day is a new opportunity, he said. There is power for change in each of us. The main thing is not to be afraid to take the first step. As the conversations continued, the sounds of evening concerts and street performances echoed through the city, uniting people in the same rhythm. Groups of young actors appeared on the streets, putting on impromptu theater performances, each scene full of symbolism and reflecting the desire for a new beginning. People stopped to watch short performances that told stories of love, loss, and rebirth. These small moments of theater became bridges between the past and the future, reminding everyone that even the deepest wounds can heal if you give yourself a chance to start over. At the same time, on the city's main square, where a celebration of creativity had recently been in full swing, the organizers of the art festival prepared a special exhibition, New Horizons. It featured works by local artists, photographers, and sculptors, reflecting themes of renewal and hope. Each painting, each installation spoke of the past being only a stage on the path to a brighter future. Visitors, walking through the exhibition, stopped in front of each work, discussing the ideas and symbols embedded in each work. These were not just works of art, but living manifestos of change that inspired and made one think about the fact that a new start is not the end, but only the beginning of a path full of possibilities. As the evening wore on, a sense of unity spread across the city. Social media filled with photos and videos of the incredible day, and conversations about how art can change lives spread throughout Portland. Many spoke of the evening as a turning point for them, a moment when they realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, there is always light to be found in the darkest corners of the soul. In every look, in every smile, there was a determination to move forward, despite all the adversity. Inspired by the general mood, groups of people organized walks around the evening city, discussing their dreams and making plans for the future. Someone suggested creating a community of creators, where everyone could share their ideas and support each other, and someone dreamed that the inspiration born that evening would become the basis for new city projects. It felt like Portland itself was turning into a huge creative workshop, where every corner is ready to serve as a source of ideas and a symbol of a new beginning. Meanwhile, in one of the small halls of the local cultural center, a round table was held on the topic of a new start and the future of creativity. Many famous artists, musicians, writers, and activists gathered there to share their views on the importance of continuing to create and not rest on our laurels. The discussions were lively and passionate, with each participant sharing their own struggles and triumphs, and how art helped them find the strength to fight life's storms. These conversations became a real source of inspiration for all present, reminding them that change starts small but can grow into something grandiose, capable of changing the whole world. Keanu Reeves stood up several times to contribute his thoughts to the discussion. He spoke about how he himself had once sought his own path in life, faced with misunderstandings and doubts, and how each trial became a lesson that brought him closer to a brighter future. His words, imbued with wisdom and experience, became a kind of guiding star for many, indicating that a new beginning is not just words, but a call to action that can awaken in everyone confidence and determination to move forward. As Portland continued to pulsate with lights and music at night, there was a sense of an evening to remember. People, inspired by conversations and encounters, felt the past dissolving in the warm glow of the present, leaving behind only the desire to move forward to a new, unwritten future. Everyone felt that today they had taken a step toward change, that the world around them had become brighter and fuller, and that every detail, from the soft whisper of the wind to the distant laughter of passers-by, carried the promise of a new beginning. At the end of the evening, when most people were already heading home, a small improvised corner was set up in the central square where candles were lit. People approaching this place stopped for a moment to pay tribute to the past day and let go of old fears. Each lit flame symbolized new hope, a new start that promised to free the soul from the burden of the past and open up space for future achievements. It was a quiet, almost intimate end to the holiday, which simultaneously spoke of the end of one stage and the beginning of a completely new path. Filled with creative energy and a love of life, Portland became a place where everyone could start over, open a new chapter of their story, and believe in the power of art to unite and heal. A new start did not mean forgetting the past, It was a tribute to the path taken and at the same time a promise that ahead was a world full of light, opportunity, and true freedom for anyone who dared to take a step towards change. As evening finally gave way to night and the last lights flickering on the streets of Portland gradually faded, it seemed as if the city was frozen in anticipation of something eternal. This day, filled with creative sparks, spiritual revelations, and sincere encounters, left a deep mark on the hearts of all its participants. The legacy of one day is not just a memory of an event, but a living symbol of change that can transform an entire city and inspire every soul to a new beginning. As Portlanders reflected on the day, they talked about how art could erase barriers between people, how small acts of creativity could become a powerful movement that united the most diverse hearts. The streets of the city echoed with conversations about how for the first time someone felt their voice was heard. And their creative impulse could change not only their personal life, but the life of an entire community. It was on this day that everyone realized that creativity is not just a way of self-expression, but a universal language that can transcend cultural, social, and even personal differences. In the central square, where hundreds of people used to gather to celebrate the new dawn, the traces of the celebration now remained as a picturesque reminder that change is possible. The huge mosaic, created by the collective efforts of the townspeople, continued to shine with bright colors even in the twilight, reflecting thousands of small stories, stories of struggle, hope, dreams, and victories. Each element of this mosaic was the result of the efforts of many people who on this day were not afraid to show their true essence, allowing the world to look into their souls. This picture became a symbol of the fact that even the loneliest voice can become part of a single choral sound if it is united with the voices of others. The remnants of the celebration were spreading throughout the city, in the cozy corners of cafes, where ideas for new projects were discussed over a cup of coffee, on the streets, where street artists left behind graffiti conveying the pulse of life, and in the hearts of those who for the first time dared to believe in the power of change. Every detail, be it an impromptu open-air concert or a short but intense dialogue on the street, became evidence that one day can change not only personal destiny, but also the collective consciousness of an entire city. The day marked the beginning of a new chapter in the life of Portland. Local artists, musicians, poets, and dreamers gathered together and were already making plans for the future. They planned to organize regular creative sessions, workshops, and festivals so that the spirit of that day would not fade away and continue to inspire a new generation. People began to see the potential for change in themselves, realizing that everyone can become the creator of their own destiny, if only they are not afraid to take the first step towards their dreams. Keanu Reeves, whose quiet and confident voice became the real catalyst for this magical event, did not disappear from the memories of the townspeople so quickly. His words about change starting with a small act, that everyone can become a source of inspiration for others, echoed in the hearts of people. Many remembered his look, filled with wisdom and warmth, and those who had previously doubted the power of sincere change began to believe that one person really can light a fire that can illuminate even the darkest corners of life. In the days following this momentous event, Portland was transformed. The streets, once the city's arteries, were now the site of spontaneous art performances, street concerts, and creative groups. People inspired by the events of one day exchanged contacts, organized joint exhibitions and concerts, and even local authorities began to pay attention to the city's potential for cultural development. And while official changes to the city's infrastructure may not have occurred, a sense of confidence was born within each resident that the future belongs to those who can dream and create. The legacy of that day was not only in material changes or the emergence of new projects, but above all in how the perception of art and creativity itself changed. A new understanding arose in people's hearts. Art is not only galleries and museums, it is a way of life, a way of seeing the world through the prism of emotions, ideas, and hope. Every person who went through that day understood that creativity can unite people, that it gives them the opportunity to understand each other, overcome differences, and create something greater than the sum of its parts. The final conversations in cozy cafes, the late walks along the night streets, when the city, as if having acquired a new soul, shimmered in the light of the lanterns, became a symbol of the quiet victory of change. People returned home with a feeling of deep satisfaction, knowing that they had become part of something unique, that one day could leave a mark on history that could inspire generations. In every smile, in every look, there was gratitude for the opportunity to be heard, for the opportunity to experience the power of unity and creativity. Time passed, but the memory of that day remained alive. People told their children and grandchildren stories of how art had once united the city, how an ordinary day had become the beginning of a great change. These stories were passed from mouth to mouth, becoming part of the local folklore, which, like the mosaic on the main square itself, was made up of thousands of small stories united by a common desire for a brighter future. That day went down in Portland history as a moment when the boundaries between people disappeared, when art became a bridge connecting the most diverse souls, and when everyone realized that true magic is born not in dreams, but in the courage to make them come true. Its echoes still resonate in every corner of the city, reminding everyone that the light of hope never goes out once someone lights it, and that each of us has the potential to become creators of a new world if only we believe in the power of art and love.